Well, today we have a real treat. We're joined by Paul Myatt, who's from Piano Teaching Success, and we're going to be talking about whole body learning. So, first of all, Paul, could you just explain to us what you mean by this idea of whole body learning? What does that mean when you say that?
Well, Nicola, it's what it says. It's using your whole body. It's based on the foundation ideas of Orff, Karl Orff, and the Orff Schulwerk, Kodai's teaching, and also Delcro's. So it's lots of very, very traditional and very strong foundation in pedagogy, but also using technology and using the piano as the learning tool. Whereas Kadai was about singing, Orff was about tuned percussion, tuned and untuned percussion, and movement. Delcro's was piano, obviously, as well, but also movement. But when you bring them back all together and you use them on piano or any instrument for that matter, it's the what happens is like magical.
Fantastic. So, I know you get some of this from Dalcroze Kadai, or if you have a few different influences going on. What kind of training did you seek out in those areas? And did you start teaching before you did those things, or did your piano teaching come later?
Well, I trained as a high school music teacher, and so I studied Orff and Delcroze and Kadai at university, and then I've spent a lot of time training in offshore work, primarily because it has such a reference to piano. Because when you use tuned percussion instruments, they're laid out in the same way as piano, so it works really well. And so all of that combined to with teaching, and when I finished university, I taught my final year prac. I studied mathematics and music, and my final year prac, my supervising maths teacher said, "Great teacher, made learning fun for the students," and my supervising music teacher said, "Dreadful teacher, made learning fun for the students." So I went, I don't think I want to be a high school teacher. So I got a job playing the piano at a department store like Harrods or something like that in Australia. And so I played the piano for 5 years, and taught as well, and then got into trying Kodai and Orff with piano, and yeah, and that's how I started.
Wow, that's really interesting. Especially that teacher's comment. It hurts. I hope things are changing, but it does hurt still
Oh,
to hear someone cough at fun. So,
yes.
could you tell us how this looks in practice? I know you're in a group format, so maybe you could describe what it looks like in your group lessons, and then we could talk later about how this might apply to private teachers, one-on-one teachers.
Well, you can use these are off the bench activities. And so the critical thing, though, is to have some music to listen to. So it should be the natural learning process is listen, sing, play, read, write. In the same way as language, we listen, then we read, then listen, sorry, speak, read, then write. And so in music, we want to listen, sing, play, read, write. And the critical thing is the singing, because for most piano students, they never sang. So singing is really important, along with the movement. So, for example, if a piece might just be something simple, it might be, I'm just going to get a note to start with, but do re mi fa sol fa mi re do. So just finding the shape of the melody, or do re mi fa sol fa mi re do. So it could be either way, and because of course with piano we have a horizontal representation of pitch, but the sheet music is a vertical representation of pitch. So we can start to get some understanding between those two elements of music. So, but the critical thing is the singing and being away from the piano, but also listening. So backing tracks are really, really important.
Wonderful. So, could you give an example then of what that might look like in like a beginner lesson versus students who are a little bit further along? What kind of thing would you be doing? You're singing along with the backing track. Are you moving as well? What does that look like?
I would be singing and moving. The things that I would be doing would be using the whole body. So using we call it body singing. So um, obviously I can't do this now because you'd lose me, but I'd be touching my toes and my knees and my hips and my shoulders and my head. So I get the student to sing the notes, possibly on their body. I might get them to play a set of chimes or a xylophone, play the notes and sing, along with a backing track, so that the music, they're hearing the music and they're singing and they're playing along. So already we've sorted out a lot of beat and rhythmic issues. So you don't need a metronome because the backing track is a metronome. It's just a much more musical one. Wow, that was awesome.
So, one concern I guess teachers might have with this type of approach or related approaches would be, okay, great. Students are going to get really good at using their ear, but do they actually learn to read music effectively if they're always allowed to hear it first?
That is the concern of every piano teacher and myself as well, you know. But the thing about learning to read is that the first critical element is that you need to have beat. If you don't have beat, you cannot read. And it's the same with actually reading language. If a if, Studies have shown that if a child cannot hold a beat at the age of 3, they're less likely, or 80% less likely, to be able to read effectively at the age of 6. So that's why it's so critical that beat is developed and the student is engaged in using beat and finding the beat. But you can then take that activity and you could get them to point to the music and sing so that they are seeing the music. And the reality is that children are never or very rarely going to be good readers at the start. And even if you look at sight reading, you know, if you do grade 8 piano, you probably are sight reading about grade 5. Well, if you work that backwards, when you're doing sort of a book two's tutor book, well, you probably should be able to read like C, 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 and they probably could read that, but they wouldn't be able to read the actual music that they are working at the level that they're working at. And that's the same. I mean, it's always 2 to 3 years behind the level that they're actually working at. And so it's not until they're a teenager that they're able to have peripheral vision, that they're able to see the music and then translate it into what's happening here. So learning to read is a really, really challenging thing. We have a thing called the reading tree, and there are 26 elements required to be able to read effectively. And it starts with beat, but then we've got all of these kinesthetic things. So if you read a third, what does a third feel like in your hand? What does the third look like when you see it? Is it harmonic? Is it melodic? And then where is the hand got to be on the piano? So that you've got to know what the notes are. Is it, you know, an F and an A, or is it an E and a G, or, you know, and so there are so many parts to reading that it takes children a long time to be able to read effectively, usually until they're teenagers. And you, occasionally, I've had a couple of 11 and 12-year-olds who are reasonable readers, but the effective readers are more teenagers. I hope that
Yeah.
makes sense.
No, it totally makes sense. I definitely agree that it takes a lot longer to develop good reading skills than people usually think. It sounds so obvious when you say it, but I've never made that connection that we say a further ahead student, so a grade 6 should be sight reading at grade 3 or 4. And then if you
Mm.
take that back to the beginning, obviously
Yeah,
you're into
exactly.
minus numbers. So it's
That's
ludicrous to
right.
expect that sight reading to
I
exist
know.
before a certain level, which is so funny. That to
Yeah.
hear it put like that makes so much sense.
Mm.
Okay, so I imagine this type of learning might be really good for all students, of course, but also especially for neurodiverse students. Have you found that those students do particularly well in your classes?
Absolutely, absolutely. And if people are interested, we've actually got a little handout that you can download from our website at pianoteachingsuccess.com, which is about teaching children with learning difficulties. I've taught a lot of kids, neurodiverse kids, over the years, and what I've noticed is if you set them up correctly, then uh, and that's supporting their learning in whatever ways they need to be supported. I know I've had a few that do not like change, and so it's about how we do things. And I remember one boy um, in our courses at Forte School of Music. We changed the Hello song after 2 years, and it was like, where's the hello song? Where's it was like there was a so we had to take him in and talk, go, we're about to change the hello song and talk him through it
Mm.
and make him comfortable. But those kids actually learn more effectively and can keep up with children who are neurotypical.
Mm.
So they're able to go and progress just as easily. I was astounded, especially dyslexic kids, because they're the ones that are often very, very bright, but they can't read. And this allows them to read.
Mm. Yeah, and I imagine it's such a wonderful experience for those students who do find school very challenging or just not the right environment for them at all. For them and for their parents to see them just, part of the gang, I guess, in your classes and not having to have special aids or anything like that. I think it must be such a wonderful experience.
Yes. We have a lady who, one of our school owners in Kent, in England, Peter Simpson. His wife is actually a specialist in the education system, working with learning challenged children. And she said, specifically for dyslexia, and she said, I love what you do because it's perfect for dyslexic kids. And what's perfect for dyslexic kids is perfect for normal, inverted commas, normal kids as well,
Yeah.
because they actually learn more effectively because it is multisensory and also multimodal.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a strong believer in moving and actually having fun, being more effective, yes, for neurodiverse students, but also for everyone, including the
Yes,
teachers. I have to say, I think it's better for us too.
absolutely. I'm astounded. I teach 50 kids a week in 9 hours, and I say to my parents, because I've currently got seven of my eight classes are in from grades 2 to grade 8 in the Trinity syllabus, and often say to the parents, I just come to work to actually relax and enjoy myself because I get so much out of the kids and doing the movement and singing and carrying on.
Yeah. Yeah, so much fun for everyone. Okay, so before we wrap up, is there anything you think that teachers should know about whole body learning or just using your body more to learn music? Is there anything you want teachers to take away in particular?
Okay, well, I think there's two critical things, and it needs to be multisensory. So that's your visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. For most people, know that. But it also needs to be multimodal. And by modal, we're talking about the different styles of learning or learning opportunities. So, for example, one mode of learning is to put the music in front of the child and they read the music and then they play. So, that's one mode of learning. And that is generally the only mode that is often used in traditional situations. So, another mode might be to sing the music and move the music. Another mode might be to sing the music and play it along with a glockenspiel along with a backing track. Another might be to listen to the backing track and point to the notes as in the music, in the sheet music, while they're singing. Notice the critical thing nearly every time includes singing.
Okay. Yeah.
So there's some ideas.
Absolutely. Oh, this has been fantastic and such a good taster for teachers who are just getting into this. So thank you so much for sharing it with us, Paul.
My pleasure, Nicola.